Hello and welcome to the Tech Show. Coming up, we discuss those new Norco bikes with the high pivot.
We're going to look at some new upside-down forks from Push.
And we've got some new Crank Brothers shoes.
And all much, much more coming up.
So Norco have blown our minds because they've released the new sight and the optic, and both of them are high pivot, which means that the optic is possibly the shortest high pivot on the market. But first up, Blake, explain, what is that sight all about?
Well, let's look at the sight. So this one is 150 on the rear, 160 on the front travel, 29 or mixed wheel size. They have an extra linkage kit, and that means you can convert between 27.5 or 29 on both the bikes. But that means if you go 29er, you're going to have to fork out a little bit more money for this linkage if you want to go to a mixed wheel size. And they have a new high pivot design, like you said.
Yeah, so previously they had the Norco's VPS, which is the virtual pivot suspension platform, which is basically their branded version of a Horselink 4-bar system. And the new bikes, including the optic, which is a 125mm in the rear short travel bike, although you do put 140mm of travel up front, so it's not exactly an XC bike. And they've changed this system, so it's still effectively like a Horselink, but it's now a high pivot as well. So what this does is it means that now that we have that famous rearward axle path. But what's really interesting about what they've done is they've patented the ability to move that idler. So, I mean, you can see that it's right by that pivot.
Right by the pivot.
But they can actually offset it, and the more they move that around, the more it changes the characteristics of the suspension. So much so that the two bikes, they may look the same, but they actually behave really differently. So the optic, the short travel one, they say with the idler placement, they have up to 10mm of rearward axle path on their 29er, 15mm of rearward with the 27.5. However, this only happens about 2/3 of the way into the suspension.
Okay.
So that's kind of, we've talked about short travel bikes and what we feel about short travel bikes. What do you feel about short travel bikes in your experience?
I'm not a fan of a short travel bike, only because I tend to push the bike a little bit harder than it needs to. I like a longer travel bike.
Yeah.
But then between the two bikes, you've got the different idler. Now, is that personally adjustable, or do you have to buy?
No. Yeah, I mean, it's a good idea, but as far as I'm aware, it's a fixed point.
Okay.
What I think's interesting about it is putting it on a short travel bike. I immediately thought, this is ridiculous. Why are we trying to make a short travel, playful, poppy bike feel like a big bike? But then talking to you and you saying, well, you bottom out like real easily. And that's obviously a problem. So maybe having that extra 10 to 15 mils of travel in the bottom end of the stroke might actually smooth things out for you. Maybe.
Sounds quite linear to me.
It does, you're absolutely right.
Feels like I'm going to bottom out again.
Yeah, I think for me, I quite like the resistance of a short travel bike. I like it ramps up quite quickly and it sort of progresses, so you get that pushback immediately. So it's really good for pumping and popping around on trails. But it's really interesting to see them play with this suspension design. They're calling it the iTrack, which is their patented formula of moving around that idler. So I'm really interested to see what people start thinking of them when they ride them. Right, before we get into the news, actually, I just want to throw to something that Norco are doing on their website that's new. If you go to the top of their site, there is this rider aligned tab. And if you go on there, what you can do is you can enter your height, your weight, what position you're riding, whether you're forwards or backwards, how you like your suspension feel or your trail grip, and you enter all of these things and it generates literally your full bike setup. So it will tell you how much tyre pressure you need, how much air pressure you need in your front and your rear suspension. It'll tell you even your high speed and low speed compressions that you need on that particular fork setup, depending on what model you choose. It even tells you what bar width and stem spaces you should be running. How cool is that? You're on it, aren't you?
I am on it right now, and I'm going to chuck it in.
I went onto this site just to see how close it was, and it's actually really close to what I run on a similar bike with the same spec. So do check that out if you want some help setting up your bike. So Push have brought out some new forks. Well, their first ever forks, and they did bring out a pretty innovative rear shock with the 11.6, which you had in the past.
Got it. Yeah, it's brilliant.
I mean, spherical eyelet bearings, so there was no binding because it moved, and you also had that flip switch as well.
Yeah, you got downhill mode or jump mode, or in other words, climbing.
Yeah, save your 2 sets of settings. So they're quite innovative. They're definitely engineers from the motor world. And, well, you can see that with this new sort of inverted fork setup, as it basically allows them to use both fixed and floating bushings in the system. And they say it decouples from various components and makes them more plush, more supple, but also stronger. So effectively, the bushings are now being upside down. The bushings will be submerged in fork oil the whole time, which keeps them constantly lubricated, which should result in a plusher fork that's more active and free from any binding. And what's really interesting is you can adjust these in 10 mil increments from 140 mils of travel up to 170 mils of travel, which is really interesting. With the same fork. Not to mention that, but the ability to switch between wheel sizes, switch between different offsets as well, and there's brake sizes can be changed without needing a without needing a
bridge thing. Mount.
Cameraman, right there on the tech. Yeah, so you can also change the disc brake sizes without needing any converters or mounts, as it's just like readily there. This is, really cool for people who want to play around with stuff. Not to mention, this is coil sprung, but it has a pneumatic bottom out, so you can actually apply air pressure between 5 and 50 psi to stop bottom out or to sort of resist it. The stanchions are 36 mils, which seems on the small side, and you might be worried about flex, but the uppers are actually 44 mil thick, so they're pretty huge. You've got that floating through axle at the bottom there. Apparently they weigh just shy of 3 kilograms, and also they're giving a warranty every year. They will reset it as long as you get them serviced by a professional that's approved by them. So as long as you keep servicing, they will forever be warranted. But you are looking at $2,600 for those forks.
That's quite a hard pill to swallow. I do like
what
that.
You're saying?
I like that hydraulic dampening.
Yeah, I know.
That just reminds me of trophy trucks, because they have these crazy hydraulic dampers. So you got the real big shock, but they got these bottom-out dampers that kind of slow down the actual bottom out. That's cool. I can see where they get that tape from.
Yeah, their engineers are all from the motorsport world.
I do like it.
Yeah.
Crank Brothers have just brought out a brand new set of shoes. Now they've got the clipless ones, which are the mallet lace, and these ones, which are the stamp lace. Now these ones are designed for the flat pedals, especially for the stamp one, which is a perfect match. But I do like the gum-coloured soles.
Are you not into the purple soles that they're doing?
No,
with the cream upper?
No,
bit jazzy, too jazzy.
Yeah, just a way a little bit. Yeah, I like jazz, but too much jazz.
Too jazz.
I don't think you can get enough jazz, but on my shoes,
sometimes
definitely.
Jazz.
But they got loads of colours within the clipless ones and the flat pedals. But these ones match up with those stamp pedals that I have, which will work dreamy with.
Yeah, so it's $169.99 for the mallets, or $149.99 for the stamps. And in other news, let's just roll through this quickly because I feel like we've waffled already.
There's been waffling
There's
today,
been some waffle.
It's good tech though.
Yeah, so there is a new Mark II Revel Rascal. So this is now a fully carbon frame, and it's promising to be stiffer, although still being lighter at 150 grams less than the previous one. It's been updated fully with new geometry and a UDH, and now they have an extra large size for all of those big riders out there.
Extraordinarily tall people.
Also, we've seen on Instagram that Neko Mulally's been mucking around, experimented with bonded frames. So this is 3D printed lugs and then bonded into the aluminium tubing, whereas previously they were kind of popping them in. Now they're like, and that looks really slick. Also, Rimpact have released a stand that fits in your bottom bracket hole.
Whoa.
Yeah, so
does that depend on what cranks you've got?
If you've got, you need to have a hole to put the stand in, but then you can actually backpedal if you want to do maintenance or bike
good for
cleaning.
an e-bike.
Pretty good. And did we spot a new specialised epic on Instagram? This epic looks like it doesn't have a brain, but it does have the new SID flight attendant attached to it, and there's no black box stickers on it, which means, is it soon to be released? Who knows? What are you saying?
I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah, why would they put it out? Why did they put it out there?
I don't know. So last week's quiz question, what does DOT stand for, and what does it stand for, Blake?
Development of transportation.
No!
Development of transportation.
No, Department of Transportation.
Detrimental of... Yeah. Department. Yeah,
For all the people who got it correct, unlike Blake, your names are now on the screen for massive pride points. It is Department of Transportation because it was a standardised rating that was thought up by the Department of Transportation in America so that we knew the wet and dry boiling points of brake fluid, and then they could give them a rating for safety reasons.
There we go.
I thought but you knew that already, really. You just didn't know the name
Department
of
Transportation.
DOT.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this week's question is about Norco. So they were founded in 1964, and the Rail was one of their first in-house branded bicycles, released a couple of years later. But what style of bike was it?
60-inch hardtail.
That's very specific.
Was made in the 60s.
But it is in the 60s, so maybe that'll help give you a clue.
What is the answer?
I'll tell you next week.
Damn.
Right, it's bike cave time, where we snoop around people's bike caves. And this first one has been sent in by Christian from Bavaria in Germany. And what we're saying about that is pretty simple. However, what I like about this is he has a rented apartment, which he's not allowed to drill holes into walls and stuff. So he built everything himself, and it's all dismantleable. So
it's modular.
Yes,
so you can move it around this property. Now that is cool.
He's built a bike rack into the shelving with his propane tie hanging up there.
I'm a big fan of bike caves. I spent a few months building mine, and
you did.
I'd still in there building stuff already, and that is very good.
What do you think? Is it rivaling yours?
Yes, especially it's modular. You can move it around. Take a look at that. I like his drawers. Brilliant.
I love it. And then almost on the opposite end of the scale here is Chris from Little Rock, Arkansas. And his bike cave is, I mean, is that not Neil's dream bike cave right there?
It is massive, look at that.
Surfboards in the back, full workshop on the side.
Yes.
Look at all those wheels and bikes hanging up at the back.
Fat bikes, I'm a big fan of that. Look at it. He's got loads of room. All his tools are there ready to grab.
Oh, you'll like this, Blake. He said his wife allowed him to create a bike cave space in the garage as long as there was space in the middle for her to park her Jeep.
Ooh! That's the perfect wife right there.
I know.
She drives a Jeep. I'm a big fan of Jeeps.
So there you are. Anyway, thank you for your bike caves. Do send them to the uploader if you want to share them, or rewinds or top mods. It's in the link in the description below. Okay, some comments from last week's show. We were talking about those new SRAM Maven brakes. What we got? What were people saying?
We got one here from Oik JDM. It says the fact that the base version is called Bronze Maven and not Iron Maven, a huge shame. Imagine that.
I've got Sai who says, I'm going to go ahead and say I like dot more than mineral. Mineral is so much harder to clean off my parts. Ooh, I will say that dot is actually quite corrosive. So, if you do get it anywhere, you definitely want to be wiping that off. Otherwise, it can take away the paint and some other stuff.
It's taken away the chrome. They're anodizing stuff off my Hope brakes that I've got in the loft.
Really?
Yeah, it did. It looks really horrible and very corrosive. Anyway, moving on. Our next comment is coming from DGTF, well, it's actually -TF9RP.
A little catchy.
Yeah, a little catchy there. If you upgrade your brakes to that much power, you have to get a tyre that can handle that much power.
Well, there's a good point, actually. Well, there's no good having a cross-country tyre with a downhill brake, is there? Good point. Jack says, seems like someone that worked at Whitey went to Canyon because somehow that new Spectral looks just like a Jeffsy. What are you saying, right? Here's a Spectral. And then here is a Jeffsy. Do they look similar?
Oh, blimey.
Not too bad. Well, it's an interesting note. Anyway, finally, what are we looking forward to this week? So Owen's going to bleed some Shimano brakes for us.
Oh, I like that.
To do that?
Yes and no. I struggle with bleeding brakes.
Really? Well, maybe you should watch this video.
Is it a push, pull, push?
Only one way to find out, Blake, and that is to watch GMBN Tech this Saturday. And also, Rich is doing work experience in the 5 Dev factory.
Now that is going to be a good watch.
Yeah, so that's on Sunday. So check that out. And in the meantime, let us know down in the comments below, what do you think of this new trend of high pivots with short travel bikes?